calling up the partners of the Mohn Art Collective, also known as MAC3. The Mohn Art Collective is a project in which Jarl Mohn and his wife Pamela gave a collection of almost 300 works of emerging LA artists to be co-owned by three institutions, by MOCA, by the Hammer, and by LACMA, with an endowment to keep them in one place with their own curator on site, but also with an endowment so the three museums would be collectively adding to that singular collection. And that's one of the things that makes it so extraordinarily different. So Jarl Mohn, and we've got Jarl Mohn, collector and benefactor of just about every Los Angeles arts organization you can imagine. To his left, Zoe Ryan, the director of the Hammer Museum. Ann Goldstein, who's the interim director of MOCA LA, where she spent a great part of her career as a senior curator. So back to LA for Ann from Chicago, and then Michael Govan again. So Jarl, just talk about how the project evolved.
Here we go. You'd think as this jockey, the first thing I would do would be to turn the microphone on. Goes to show you how long it's been. You know, the creation of MAC3 and the way it came together, it's really been a bit of a surprise about how almost effortless it has been. And I think it's really a testament to the kind of city that Los Angeles is and the heritage of the city of Los Angeles with an incredible community of artists. And the artist community has been really vibrant there. I mean, we can use a music analogy that some people may be more aware of, which would be Laurel Canyon in the 60s and the 70s. You know, people would say there was something in the water at the time because the camaraderie, the music that was created, and the affinities amongst these artists. You know, sadly, I think on the music side, at least my perception is that that is kind of faded. But I think on the art side, it has never been stronger than it is today. So when we started talking amongst ourselves about this idea about what to do with this collection, there was universal excitement and energy, and it really came together naturally. And I think one of the other elements, and I'd like to credit the Getty for this, which is, it's when I started thinking about this, Pacific Standard Time. I kept hearing from my friends who were working at museums, curators, directors, so forth, how much they loved working with each other. And so that, along with this vibe that was in the community of artists, I think made it just happen naturally.
Can maybe each of you can talk a little bit about how did this collection, because it did make a certain sense for various strengths and gaps in each institution, right? Whether the museum already had some of these artists or didn't have any of them. Can you talk a little about how it fits? I mean, for the directors. Sorry.
You actually are in Los Angeles
Sure,
the
I'll go
longest. Yeah, since the early. I'm a newcomer.
Exactly, the newcomer.
Compared to Ann.
Fourth week into the job. And thrilled to be here and to be part of this incredible initiative. Yeah, having been at MOCA in its early years, from like 1983 to 2009, and then coming back 16 years later, there's so many moments of incredible eye-opening. And in the early days, I think there was the competition between all of the institutions, the ideas that everybody should have the same artists for themselves. And in many ways, that's always going to continue. But I think that coming back into Los Angeles at a moment where there is such a profound support for contemporary art and investment on the part of so many institutions in the city, and the fact that Los Angeles is such an incredible artist center in this country and in the world, it makes so much sense to come in and to come into this initiative. And after all the institutional experience I've had, where I've seen duplications of works, not just collecting the same artists, but actually sometimes the same photographs that might be by the same artist in different institutions. When I was in Amsterdam, you know, I was at the Stedelijk Museum, and the Rijksmuseum is like 1,000 feet away, and they have the same collection. And that seems so ridiculous to repeat and overlap in those ways. So this idea of creating a resource creating a kind of friendly collaboration, only thanks to the incredible resources and generosity of Jarl and vision. I think it's an incredible opportunity for us and to support Los Angeles, which is such an incredible city.
Maybe I'll go next as definitely the newbie in the room, having only been at the Hammer since January. I think for us, what is incredible is obviously the MAC3 and the collection, that is the founding collection of MAC3, grew out of Made in LA, which is the Hammer's biannual. And for the Hammer, the idea of MAC3 really expands all the possibilities of what we can do with Made in LA. And at the core of that, obviously, is that Jarl and Pamela, who support arts in LA in all kinds of ways, but were very visionary in that they started collecting from Made in LA in 2012 when we started. So have one of the best collections already amassed. And then with the group of works that the Hammer is providing, we will have, I think, 385 or something like this works that will be the founding group of works in MAC3. For us, I think it goes to Michael's point about there is definitely a lot of brain around the room. Because all the curators from the three institutions, we have three curators from the institutions that get together with us and really think about what we're collecting, and it really opens up, I think, really different lines of communication. And for me, what was, I think, really terrific in a sad way about MAC3 was when I joined on January the 5th, on January the 6th were the fires, and in a matter of days, Michael and then Johanna, who was at MOCA, we were on the phone together. I think a testament to MAC3 and the founding, because those lines of communication were already open. We already had kind of a collaboration and partnership, and we were beginning to discuss, what could we do to contribute to the obviously fire relief, especially for the artistic community. Again, with Jarl's help, because he's simply the best. And then partnering with the Getty and others, of course, we created the Fire Relief Fund that was giving immediate support. So I felt in that way, MAC3 served many different purposes because it really brought me into dialogue with you and Johanna. One other funny one was when we were, during Freeze, we had an opportunity, again, because of Jarl, to go and acquire a work for MAC3. And the three directors and Jarl paced around the fair early, and Michael and Johanna made a beeline to a work by Edgar Arsenault, because they knew that we had all collected work by him. They knew what was in our collections, and they knew how this piece would really contribute, because we didn't have a piece of this quality, scope, and scale. And I thought that was, just getting off the starting blocks. But then Jarl and I were sidebarring about a contemporary artist that we'd seen that we didn't know anything about, Shaniqua Jarvis. And again, back to the idea of Made in LA being somewhat the genesis of MAC3 and the idea of us supporting, this next generation of artists. We asked Jarl if he would help us also support, and we acquired a work by Shaniqua. So I think for me, it's very manifold, the possibilities and how expansive this collaboration can be.
Zoe's giving me a little more credit for this than I really deserve. I noticed in the conversation when we were deciding what to acquire, she was being very quiet. And I said, Zoe, what's on your mind? And she says, well, Edgar, we collect him, we know him. He's a great part of the community. We all love this work. It's great. But shouldn't we make a statement about an emerging artist? So it was really Zoe who was behind the Shaniqua Jarvis acquisition. I had nothing to do with it.
All right. Michael, go ahead.
I've already talked about the benefits of sharing. You're feeling the dynamic of the benefits of sharing. And truly, museums are, they're vessels for art, but they're really vessels for people, hopes, dreams, ambitions, connectivity. And I think it just teases it out. I think LA is like a fantastic laboratory for that, because we're kind of big enough to have that diversity and small enough to know each other. But I think important point that Anne raised is it doesn't mean everybody becomes the same. Right, like we've all had shows with artists, and then we've collected them in depth, and we're in a reservoir at MOCA for Rothko, barely, I mean, we have one. But so it doesn't mean it's just taking this section and segment of what we do as a way to create all the connectivity and all the benefits that accrue way beyond the sharing of art. And I think that's one of the main points, is that these instruments that we create mean so much more than the bricks and mortar. Their connections to communities and people, and we are a little bit sharing a brain that's larger if we can share the diversity of our perspectives.
I'm not the first to say this, but it's clear that the next era of museums is going to have to see a lot more collaboration kind of across the board. And one of the things I think you're saying is just pick your area, because and find the right people. But I love all the fact of how well it's gone, but talk about what's hard, because this is not native behavior. What were the challenges to overcome? And I know when I talked to Jarl first about this, he said Michael was smart enough to say they always met over cocktails.
That softens all the issues.
No, we've tried to keep it very social, and that helps a great deal. But and maybe Michael or Zoe, can address something that was difficult. I don't think we've gotten there yet. I'm sure it'll happen. I mean, it happens with any collaboration. It happens with any joint venture. It'd be unrealistic for us to assume that that's not going to be the case. But I think the camaraderie, the sense of community, and how much joy everybody seems to be having with this has helped us overcome a lot of things. And I'm not being Pollyanna-ish about this. We really haven't hit anything hard yet. I know we will.
Well, we all have CFOs, and so we have cocktails, and then they actually do the work and crunch the numbers, and then we have arcane discussions about our rate of return expectations on our endowment and how we should calculate that for Jarl. So it's not like there isn't a lot of nitty-gritty detail, which we're still working out.
But you get all that done before you bring it to me, which is so sweet.
Right, we're so sweet.
So one of the great things about this partnership, you're feeling the camaraderie, but just to state the obvious, 2 of the 3 museums are being led by different people than actually were in place as leaders when this was established. There's something also about this, that collaboration isn't, big projects need to transcend and succeed the leaders, right?
Well, actually, that is the point. Okay, the institutions are good and bad. Everything's good and bad. It's in the strengths or the weaknesses. Like a lot of the weaknesses of institutions is that they can be slow and difficult and all of that. But the beautiful thing is that they, again, are vessels that go beyond our lives or tenures if they're constructed well. And this was immediately, we barely even have a little like the hint of the halo of the institution. Of course, Jarl's here, but it already works, because when you establish shared principles, you buy into it. That's, I think, why we have institutions, to transcend lifetimes or tenures. And so it's working even in a micro way here.
Jarl has also had a long relationship with all of these institutions. So it didn't just start with one. It's really, there's...
Including Anne in her first iteration. When I was building my first collection, which was Minimalism and Light and Space, Anne put together one of the most, some of you probably have seen it, the primary structures minimal show at MOCA. I don't know, what year was that?
2004.
2004. And I was really starting to get very excited. I think, it was maybe 2000 I started to really become investigating minimalism. Anne gave me one of the first copies of the catalog, walked me through the show, kind of held my hand and helped direct me in the beginnings of that collection, which is, so we have a long history ourselves.
It's great.
Also, we approach this with the generosity of spirit, but I think we also, Anne will know this, I think for me what's really important about the project is it's very civic. And Jarl has sort of set the gold standard. Anne and I used to work in Chicago, and I always really appreciated how civic philanthropists were there when they give to the Art Institute of Chicago or the MCA, or they really give to the city, like they're building a collection for the city. And I feel like Jarl, with this project, in many ways, I feel like it has this sort of ethos that you're setting the gold standard for what is civic philanthropy, which I think is even more important, that we are giving back, and the platform for LA artists is absolutely at the core of this. How do we support them and provide those platforms across 3 institutions? And also I think the other thing that is so, it's not exciting to that many donors to talk about storage. or to worry about storage along with us. It's very anxiety inducing, as we've all said in the statistics. My God, I'm going to go back and every piece scrutinize even further. But it is, it's disappointing also when there's a piece of work that you think would be so important for the museum, but you cannot, you're just struggling to either accept the gift or make the acquisition because of the storage concerns. And Jarl has really embraced the idea by, endowing storage in perpetuity for these works. And I feel, Jarl is beloved by artists and very revered by other collectors and donors, which is extremely helpful for us because he is an influencer and has already influenced, I think, a lot of other collectors who are now having those kinds of discussions with us, who would never have cracked open the door to a conversation about, if I, give you this, what else can I do in terms of storage for that piece? And I think that is invaluable.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, you talked about curators can sometimes, or any museum professional can think about a collection being theirs. Sometimes museums think about donors being theirs. And I think this is such a great example of a donor who, you bet on the right donor, obviously, who thought of each of you as his, right? And we're willing to share together. But let me ask you now to talk about what's happened, because one of the most exciting things is about the capacity of just the fact of creating this collaboration has opened you up to a couple things. Zoe talked about you had a platform to think about the fire relief development, right? So all of a sudden it didn't come out, have to go, how do we start a new conversation? There was one happening. But the one I'm most excited about, which is one I think was completely unexpected, talking to Jarl, is MAC3 is now receiving gifts from others. Can you talk about this? Because I think this is so exciting about how this kind of generative collaboration is attractive to other people.
Well, I'd like to do the setup to this because Michael probably won't take credit for this as he should. But we were walking through the conversation that Zoe brought up about us all going through Freeze last year, and trying to decide what we wanted to acquire from MAC3. We were going through a booth, and again, the fair hadn't opened yet. We're stepping over things. They're installing at booths, and we're worried we're going to bump into things. And we went through one gallery, and there was a Noah Purifoy exhibit, and we were looking at his beautiful work. And Chelsea Hadley here. Chelsea, could you raise your hand? Chelsea is the director of MAC3 and a longtime friend of mine and former employee of Michael Govan's at LACMA, and has done a number of projects with the artist Ed Ruscha. And Michael, knowing that Ed Ruscha has been on the Noah Purifoy board, a foundation, for many years, I thought, jokingly, said to Chelsea, you ought to call Ed up and see if he'll buy one of these for MAC3. And we all kind of giggled. We thought that was pretty funny. I didn't take it seriously. 4 days later, Chelsea calls me and says, I talked to Ed, and he said he'd think about it, and he thought about it. He said, no, I'm not going to buy one of those Purifoys, but I have some things in my collection, and I'd like to give MAC3 a collage. And so we ended up with this magnificent collage from Noah Purifoy from Ed Ruscha's collection, and that was really exciting. And then we have announced that. We haven't announced. You have to be careful of this yet because we haven't gone public. But you would never betray me, would you?
There are reporters in the room. Remember.
The reporters would never.
There may be something, the point is that you would not be surprised to learn that kind of gift might attract others, right? And there might be other announcements in your future.
There will be other announcements
That's right.
very soon, thanks to Michael and Chelsea and, Ed Ruscha. And so
it was a beautiful thing that an artist gave the first work to the collection of artists, because it's a thing in LA that artists collect each other's work. And there's a thing about artists, too, because we've all worked with Ed Ruscha. He loves us all, I think. And he wouldn't want to give it to LACMA or MOCA or Hammer individually, would he? But there's that thing. I just give it to all of them, and then I'm like, I love them all. And so there's a nice quality to the spirit of that, again, artist to artist. And then the other part of the spirit is in future announcements that we're thinking about that. We've inspired others to imagine that when they gift works, they will also add money to the pot for storage so that your statistics grow appropriately with the backup to them. And so that's one of the most innovative and exciting ways that we're thinking about this. And it's hard for a collector to say, I'm giving you the work, isn't that enough? But the stewardship is the other half of the work.
Right.
And so then it's a total gift if it really comes with that, as yours are.
Any other thoughts about, how the surprise of that, Zoe? I mean, I'm thinking about it in terms that, private museums built on private collections do eventually receive gifts. So obviously people have made great gifts to the Frick collection, but it was many, many decades before an unrelated party decided to make a gift to that collection, right? This took 4 months, 3 months, right?
Well, Jarl said that he's very good at branding in business. And we talked about, that's why it's also MAC3 too. You can spell it out, or it's a thing. You could put it on a baseball hat or on your socks.
Swag.
Swag. So we plan a lot of swag.
Merch, man. We start with merch and we work backwards. We reverse engineer everything from merch.
This is, of course, the man behind MTV. Sound familiar? 3 letters. Well, where do you all see this going? I mean, you've shown this capacity to incorporate new leaders, a capacity to incorporate unexpected activity quickly, to respond to unimaginable crises in your hometown. What else do you see coming down the road for MAC3 and what it means, especially for this community? I love what you've said about how this starts transforming a relationship between 3 institutions that all will thrive and find their own role in serving the arts in LA and beyond.
I think one of the interesting things also is how we collect, right? So the Made in LA years, we're collecting from Made in LA, and then the off years where the curators select work from the LA community, other work that will build depth and breadth, or brand new work that we're looking at. So the other thing is I feel very fortunate because we have people on the ground, like also just really keeping us up to date with the scene in LA and the artists that are working and people we need to watch out for. It's interesting when you think the Made in LA, which will open on October the 4th, I have to do a bit of plug here. There are many artists in that show that have lent work by other artists in the show, and we're going to sort of trace some of that in the exhibition. So it is true, there is big support by artists for artists in LA. But I think the other thing, I think a testament to why people are interested in this and why they want to give is also there is a real trust in our institutions that we will do right by the work, but also that we are genuine about that, that we do want to support our own in a way, and it's not easy to be in LA as an artist, and getting incredibly, more difficult just because costs and other environmental things that keep cropping up. So I think, the more that we can do to create that community around MAC3 and the work, and obviously get the work to be seen, and support one another in those efforts, it's really important. But this is a good, I think, starting point and springboard for us to imagine what might come next.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even the word, when we're discussing branding, the word collective came up partly intentionally, that we don't know what the future is, but we know it's going to generate something. Because just the work together, the collection of minds and energy and creativity and curators. So intentionally, it's supposed to do things we never imagined, as Zoe's saying, right? That's part of the point of it.
And I think the artist community, back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is such an important part of Los Angeles, and I think it's the real basis for what the city is all about. I think a lot of ideas are going to, they're not going to just come from us or just from the curators. They're going to come from artists. And we have some great stories about how, all these institutions somehow kind of interlock. One of the small institutions that we support is called LAND, LA Nomadic Division, which funds public art. And we do a series of grants every year called the Mohn Land Grants. And we give an artist $5,000 to create public art. And in our very first year there, which was, I think, the first time we did that was 2023, there was a young an artist from Guatemala who lives in LA now named Jackie Amezquita. And Jackie did a public display protesting, did some signage about people who have died in ICE detention centers in Los Angeles just prior to 2023. The curators from the Hammer discovered her, put her in Made in LA 2023. She did a magnificent piece. Is it $144 tiles? I don't know how many. It's a grid, 144, and made with each from a different neighborhood in Los Angeles. Earth mixed with cornmeal and rain, and then bordered in copper. It was beautiful. It's a magnificent piece. Ended up winning our Mohn Award that year, made in LA, and now it's on its way to LACMA.
It was hung yesterday, so you can go see it along with 6 other works from the MAC3 collection that are on view at LACMA right now in our current collection show. So you
it's
can actually see it.
It's just to the question we always think about what's it going to be. I just think it's going to be highly iterative, and we have so many creative minds, including the minds, particularly the minds of the artists. They're going to take us to different places, and I think we're all ready and flexible and raring to go.
All those words, when I was given the remit to start Remuseum, the language that David Booth and Alice Walton used was to help museums rethink their legacy systems and innovate. And one of the things I felt was that, who wouldn't have a hard time doing that is artists. And sometimes museums just need to embody the spirit of artists as much as they can. And I love everything you've said here is about something about this collaboration has freed you in a way that artists are, to be generous and generative, to be iterative, to reimagine what you're going to be tomorrow can be different from what you were yesterday. And what a great symbol of the capacity for museums to adapt and give back to their communities and to each other. So I'm one of the ones that are very excited to see where this thing goes and how you'll inspire others around the country. Thank you all. Thank you.